Good afternoon, Stuart. Just Niels here. I've just finished watching your video response to my video about the irrationality of national pride. I was going to just write these in your comments, but there's quite a few points I wanted to raise, and it's just easier to do it via video response. Now, I put my hands up in the air. I'm sorry, mate. I forgot all about Belgium. I guess that ultimately it's because I don't see Belgians as being very nationalistic, other than when it comes to football, but I'll get to that later on. Belgians tend to know that they are a tiny, pretty insignificant country. Besides, they're too busy fighting each other because you have the Flanders against Wallonia, and there is linguistic difficulties there. But it's important to note, and I will readily admit, that Belgium has its faults. As I said in my comment on your video response, by far the bloodiest episode in the colonialism of Africa in the 19th century was at the hand of Belgian imperialists, in particular Leopold II. The entire episode of the Belgian Congo is atrocious. They were using it as natural resources supply for the rubber industry, and hundreds of thousands of people were killed, maimed, raped, violated, or just simply harmed because of this. So no, Belgium, not all good, not all bad. Certainly give and take. Now, to get back to the football. Now, I'm not a sports person. I don't particularly care who's playing who. I never watch football or soccer, as our American cousins call it, on television. I find it utterly boring. But it is interesting that you raise football, because football in itself is one of the primary reasons for nationalism, and I'm talking about negative nationalism in the UK. Now, you know very well, as much as I do, about some of the incidents that took place with the stadium and the Heysel, hooliganism that goes on attached to riots and violent behaviour that is intrinsically linked to nationalism within the realms of football. So I do think that football has a very big place to play in what I would consider to be negative nationalism. Moving on from that, you mentioned the Australians are too funny. I was over there for the Olympics, and they just kept on flooding the Olympic lists with their own sports stars. There were more Australians than anything else. It was so hilarious. And of course they had the Aussie, Aussie, Aussie chant. But I think that the Aussies actually take their nationalism with, tongue firmly planted in cheek. It's not very serious. They love Australia. They think it's a wonderful place, and I think it's a wonderful place. I stayed there for a year and a half. It was beautiful. But other than the typical drongo meathead that you might encounter in the odd pub brawl, most Australians tend to be very laid back about nationalism. They think it's a nice country. It's one of the only countries that was founded through the signing of a document rather than a war, and that definitely is a claim to fame. But they don't take it too seriously, and I appreciate that. It's a little bit like the Norwegians. They also have that attitude, and a bit like the Belgians. They also have that. It's nationalism, but tongue-in-cheek and very moderate. Now, I wanted to get to another point that you raised. You mentioned, and I know, of course, that you have travelled considerably, and I have too. I think that together, if we tally our countries, the only continent that we haven't touched is probably Antarctica. So, that's good. But I have this hypothesis that travelling decreases a person's sense of nationalism. Now, I have travelled considerably, and I think it is because I have travelled that much that I view human beings not as countries or nations or polities, but rather in terms of humanity. I tend to look at human beings as being pretty much equal. You know, we encounter bigots, zealots, and idiots all over the place, as well as open-minded, nice, kind people. It's not. I definitely am not going to stereotype as far as that's concerned. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the French expression "le voyage forme la jeunesse." Traveling brings upon a state of mind that will keep you enthralled and amazed by humanity, and I think that it's key to any sort of open-mindedness at a human, global, planetary level. Bit of a personal point. It's a wonderful idea. I do recommend gaining dual nationality. France is a beautiful country. You seem to be enjoying it thoroughly. I'm very envious, but I will be going back to Belgium at some point. So if you ever fancy having a beer or just hanging out, I'm there. But going back to the original point, we are essentially talking about the same thing. We are seeing eye to eye on this. The only difference is that I think that there is a difference to be made between pride and pride with a capital P. Okay, it's fine to love a country. I love Norway, I love Australia, I love Belgium, I love France, I love Russia, I love loads of countries, and I love Norwegians, I love Australians, I love Belgians, I love Russians, and a variety of other different groups. And I would want to defend them if ever anything happened to them. I want to fight for humanity, for our own little cultures, for our own individuality and uniqueness. But then it's very different, that sense of national love. I wouldn't call it pride, I would call it national love. It's very different to what nationalism is generally linked to, which is to say, loving your country at the expense of another. That is traditionally what nationalism implies in practice. If you look around, people who haven't travelled, will be the ones who are saying USA, 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 because to them USA is the best nation on the planet. Well, I think we've demonstrated quite clearly in the past 50 years that that is not the case, and I think we've also demonstrated that there is no such thing as a best country in the world. They're all equally fucked and they're all equally wonderful. So I think it's great to fight for the people you love, the culture that you love, but to then go on to saying, well, I love England, bugger the French, I think that is completely out of order. And that is essentially what I'm referring to when I say, that national pride is irrational, because it is. Anyway, Stuart, peace, my friend. I wish you good luck tonight at work. See you later.